Glen Sobel, what's up, man?
Hey, Fran, my old buddy Fran. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you for coming on.
No problem at all. Welcome to my home.
Yeah. You're still in, you mind me saying, in Woodland Hills, Calabasas area?
Yeah, West Hills. Yeah,
West Hills,
that's
yeah.
kind of the same area. Yeah, the West
Yep.
Valley. I'm born and raised this area.
I think you let me borrow a drum
Yeah,
for a music video I was shooting or something,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. You dropped by my place. That's right.
Yeah.
Still in
It's
the
been a
same joint.
it's been a while ago. So, for those of you that don't know, you were featured in my documentary called Hired Gun, and you did probably the standout drum solo. And
Huh.
when I was talking to Liberty the other day, he was talking about you on the podcast. He's like, man, how he does those stick tricks and plays and not looking at what he's doing, just looking straight into the camera is just amazing, right? Like that routine you did, how long did that take you to like perfect?
I mean, is anything ever truly perfected? I think any real musician will tell you that it's a lifelong journey. But I guess some of that, those stick tricks as they're called, it came from marching band. I did that in high school, and then you just kind of translate some of that over to the drum set. But I always got to say, kids, don't focus on that as your number one thing. That does not get you a gig. That's not the substance. That's the frosting on the cake. I always got to throw in that disclaimer.
Yeah, I mean, there you are right there, just twirling away, not even looking, paying attention, but yeah,
Photographers like that, and they always like featuring those shots. But
yeah.
and thanks Liberty for bringing it up. He's such a great guy and a great influential player. So and I got to know him. I guess it was through the movie. I don't,
You
I don't
know,
think
it's
I had met
funny.
him before that.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I'd say 90% of the people that I featured in the movie, I'm still really good friends with. And, when I was
Yep.
still in California, you and I would go have lunches together and hang out. And I think we went to TSO to like go to
Yeah.
shows or whatnot and just have a really
Totally.
good time. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
somebody was crazy enough to transcribe uh, your drum solo from Hired Gun.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
found it online. I
Wasn't
mean,
me.
no, I mean, it could have been Kenny Aronoff because he transcribes everything. But I mean, look at that
No, I
chart.
know who did that. I know that's Brad Schluter from Drum Magazine. He's a transcribing dude. That's like what he does, and that's a whole other discipline where you really gotta have a good ear, but know musical notation extremely well.
Yeah, that's nuts. So you're currently in Alice Cooper's band. When did you get that gig?
Man, on April 30th, I count April 30th as the anniversary. It will be 14 years.
Wow,
Yeah,
14 years. I mean, that's,
flies
as
by.
we know, yeah, most session players or hired guns don't have a career like that with one artist. I mean, look at Liberty. You're almost at the halfway point that he had with
Right.
Billy, right? So
Right.
imagine yeah, it's like an Alice isn't going anywhere, man. I've never seen anybody tour as much as that guy ever.
Yeah, no years off. He has more energy than all of us.
Yeah,
He golfs on tour like 5 days a week, and we got to keep up with him. That is no joke.
right. Right. And I have
Yeah.
when I interviewed him for Hired Gun, he told me this himself was like, this is my favorite band that I've ever had.
It's been probably the most consistent lineup. This lineup you see here
Yeah.
with all six of us, that's been in place since 2014 when Nita came on. But
Yep.
besides that, it's been consistent since 2012. And yeah, maybe this is the longest lineup he's had. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Now, every now and then he'll bring up some of the older guys, right? From the Love It to
Yeah,
Death, Billion
yeah,
Dollar Babies. Has he ever
yeah.
had
We
Neil
just
Smith come up to
sure,
play?
yeah. Well, yeah, and just like a couple weeks ago, we had a one-off in Phoenix, and Dennis
Mm,
Dunaway, original bass player, came up to play Schools Out. He's done that a lot. But you asked about Neil Smith. Man, in 2017, fall of 2017, we did a Europe run, and the UK dates, it was Dennis Dunaway, Neil Smith, and Michael Bruce, all three of the other surviving members of the band. They came out on tour with us on the bus. And
mm.
so at the end of the set, towards the end of the show, the three of them would come out and they do a mini set of 3 or 4 songs. And then for the finale, all 9 of us would play Schools Out together with 2 drum sets, 2 bass players, what felt like 12 guitar players, you know.
Right.
But yeah, the fans just, oh my God, they loved it. And it was so fun to play double drums with Neil. He's a great dude. They're all way cool dudes, and we've become pretty good friends with them.
Yeah. When you were learning Neil's parts, how good of a drummer is he? Because I got to tell you, man, Love It to Death is the reason I started listening to hard rock music.
Really?
18 came out. Oh yeah, 18 came out when I was a kid, and that's what I was listening to. I'm like, wow, it's a rebellious song. It's got guitar, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? And then
sure.
I saw the album in the stores, and I couldn't stop looking. It was like looking at Kiss Alive, right? You're just studying Alice with the makeup and the band and this crazy garb. But tell me a little bit about Neil's playing and how it influenced you in your live performance show with Alice.
Well, interesting that you would ask, because I had to become, like, in a way, intimately familiar with his playing, because the very first thing I ever did for Alice was when there was a video game. I believe it was Rock Band, the video game.
Hmm.
They wanted Alice songs like School's Out, No More Mr. Nice Guy, a couple few others. So this is a common thing, and I'm going to blow the lid on this. I don't care. But artists re-record their own songs and the
Right.
singers re-sing it. Yeah, it's been done many times. So Alice and management, they wanted to redo Schools Out and all these songs. So Tommy Henriksen at the time, who's in the band with me, he was working with Bob Ezrin in Nashville as sort of apprentice, co-producer, mixer. And so Bob was called to do the redos. Bob did it originally. He produced Love It to Death and Schools Out and everything, Billion Dollar Babies. So he left it up to Tommy to bring in the musicians. So Tommy called me to do it. He knows that I read music. I can make note for note transcriptions of Neil's playing. And I really discovered on that, it's like, whoa, this is a really integral part of the sound of this band. He has his own unique thing going on. And when you have to learn something, you appreciate it more, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah, that album was so influential with me and on my trajectory into hard rock and heavy metal. Then it kind of progressed into, you know, Sweet.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
then, transitioned into Kiss, Judas Priest, Maiden, and all those bands. What were you listening to growing up as a kid that made you want to be a rock drummer?
Well, I had heard Alice, I knew the hits. I wasn't
Hmm.
like deep in it and had the records, the deep cuts I didn't know. But coming in, it's like, oh yeah, Under My Wheels, Billion Dollar Babies. I'm familiar with all those just from having it be in the background of my life. But coming up, I was full on a Rush Zeppelin kid, which was
Okay.
really typical of my surroundings and upbringing, and it's just typical for a lot of drummers. But then it grew into, in addition to Rush, Zeppelin, Van Halen, it grew into progressive acts, Genesis, and UK, if people know that, and then the fusion, the jazz fusion artists of the '70s, the '80s, Mahavishnu Orchestra with John McLaughlin, Return to Forever with Chick Corea,
Right.
Weather Report. I just dove in deep, and so I was kind of coming from both sides of, well, I really like the rock stuff, but I really love the jazz stuff too. And I stuck to my guns. I didn't bow to that peer pressure that kids can do when they say, "Oh, that's not cool to listen to that. You just got to listen to this one subgenre of a micro subgenre, and that's cool. Anything else, it's like, your gang colors. You got to stick to this one genre." It's like, no, I didn't fall into that. I liked everything.
Right. It's funny you say that because I was pretty much a metalhead all the way up. Look, I'm 59 now, so it's like I've been listening to it all my life. But it wasn't until I started doing the Ray Parker Jr. documentary till I found some of these other gems that he played on.
Right.
Shaka Khan, and you listen to that stuff, man. It's mind boggling.
As a session player, yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yes, people don't know that. Yeah, he is the
yeah.
nicest guy, and we were hanging at his house that one night when you had us watch Hired Gun for the first time. That was
Oh
killer.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Steve
had met
Lukather
him.
was there. Yeah.
Yeah, I had met him previously because he lived few doors up from Richie Sambora,
Yeah,
and
he
I met
does.
him
Yeah.
at Richie's house for a party one time. He's just the nicest, most unassuming guy, and people just know Ghostbusters for the most part. And he's done so many
Yeah.
records and written and produced. Yeah,
Oh, so much stuff. Yeah. So if anybody wants to learn about him and his career, they should go check out the documentary I did. You can distribute it through Sony Pictures, and it's on all streaming platforms. I think you got to pay $3.99 right now. I'm
not bad.
hoping to God they're going to put it on, you know, like a Hulu or a Netflix soon. But I had a lot of fun making that film, and you know, speaking to his drummer buddy from his childhood who lived upstairs from him in Detroit was Ollie Brown, who played in Stevie Wonder's band.
Oh wow,
Yeah, just an amazing drummer. Um,
too cool, too cool. Yeah, that's a documentary where you got a lot of stuff to cover.
oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you've been in Alice for 14 years. You had your own band though, right? Creature, what was it called? The
Oh, Beautiful Creatures. You're going back a
Beautiful
little bit.
Creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we
So
had a
you're
deal.
yeah, I was gonna say you're a member of that band though, right?
I was, yeah, it was short lived, but
Mm.
we had a deal on Warner Brothers back when rock bands would get signed to a record deal that kind of still had that little bit of the 90s vibe, even though it was 2001 when that record came out. It was still like a big budget in
Mm.
relation to today, where it was pre Napster and pre pre social media. So it was a real deal, and there was a lot of money put into it, and we learned a ton about the record business, a lot of what not to do. But we got out there and we played. We did Ozfest, and that's a record that to this day people still occasionally come up to me in cities around the world, asking me to sign a copy of it. Proud of it.
That that is so cool, man. And on
Yeah,
the road, what is it like on the road with Alice versus? Because a lot of people may not know this either, but you're also in the Hollywood Vampires.
yeah, that's a whole other thing. And
Yeah, yeah. So what
Alex
is
sings lead in that. Yeah.
yeah. So it seems like, you know, in Alice's bus tours and everything, are you guys flying everywhere private with vampires?
We have done that
Mm,
in Europe, private flights, or it could be a mix of that and busing. And it sounds great, and a lot of it is great, but it's still all exhausting because you have to imagine, like, okay, you're in Copenhagen, Denmark, and you play a show there, and then the next day you're going to fly to Gothenburg, Sweden. You're going to play a show, and then after the show, you get back in the vans, you go back to the airport, and then fly back to Copenhagen and go back to the same hotel.
yeah.
And then the next day, you fly to Stockholm, Sweden, do the same thing, then fly back to Copenhagen. It's called hubbing,
Yep.
hubbing out of the city. So by the time you get back, it's like 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and you're exhausted. But
Yeah.
it does have its perks. It's just a lot of travel all day for one show.
Right. So I'm sure it's one thing sitting behind the kid and looking in front of you and seeing Alice Cooper, but now you're seeing Joe Perry,
Yeah.
Johnny Depp, Alice. Do you ever sit back there? And I know you can't be distracted while you're playing, but are you ever back there thinking like, how the fuck did this happen to me?
Only all the time,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, I mean, look, you play with an artist for enough years, you get used to things. I mean, the bottom line is everybody is a musician, number one. You know, if you're going to get nervous and be starstruck around somebody, well, maybe you're not ready for prime time yet. There's still that kid in me that has what you're talking about of like, whoa, this is crazy, right? Especially when we have guests that join us with Hollywood Vampires. We toured, did a long European run in 2023, and like in Birmingham, UK, Tony Iommi joined us as a special surprise guest, and we did Paranoid at the end of the show. Surprise encore. The audience didn't know he was showing up, and Alice sang it, and it's on YouTube probably in a few different clips, and it's just like, whoa, this is crazy because I've played Paranoid 2,000 times, but now I'm
Right.
playing it with the guy that wrote it and played it originally. Wild. He's a total nice guy, you know, and we've had a lot of situations like that where we'll get joined by someone and it's all of a sudden like you get 2 days notice, Ian Hunter is going to join us in Manchester, UK, and we're going to do All the Young Dudes. That's his Mata Hoople big song. And it's like, oh, this is nuts. That's Ian Hunter. But
Wow.
again, you're a musician. You got to be a professional, make it happen.
Yeah. That's easier said than done because, and I've told this in other interviews before, but I was living in the Bay Area in a town called San Rafael when I started Hired Gun. And I remember one of my dreams was to interview Alice because he's the greatest hired gun musicians ever, in my opinion. Like, you can just name them for days, right?
He knows how to pick good bands.
He does,
If
man.
I do say so myself.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, he picked you. So I was walking the dog, man, and I see a phone number. I didn't know who it was, and I picked it up, and it was Shep Gordon. And he was like, "Hey, Fran, Alice can do the interview tomorrow." I'm like,
Oh,
"Really?
wow.
Where?" He's like, "Reno, Nevada, at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Can you do it?" I'm like, "Why are you even asking me?" Of course, So I had to grab my team and come out there. My sound guy and another camera operator or whatnot. And I freaked out because my audio engineer already had another gig. He's like, "Dude, I'm shooting a commercial. I can't." I'm like, "What? What's the commercial?" And you remember the commercials with the old lady that falls down and she's got the life alert. It's like, "I've fallen and I can't get up." It was
Who
one of
doesn't
those.
know those? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was that commercial. I'm like, "Do you want to do that shit or do you want to go hang out with Alice Cooper?" He goes, "What? I'll find somebody to sub for me. Get me on a flight." So that happened. And going back to the starstruck thing, I've never met Alice before this, right? I've seen him a million times. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Alice in concert, but never met him. And I think we're on the 15th floor of this hotel. This is where I interviewed you, the same room.
Yeah, it's the
And
Grand Sierra. It's the Grand Sierra
yeah,
casino venue. We've played there like 10 times since I've been in the band.
yeah. So anyway, his personal assistant, probably tour manager or whatever, Kyler, calls me. He's like, "Hey, Fran, we'll be up in 2 minutes." I'm like, now the shit's real, right? And you got to remember, I've been listening to Alice since I was like 7 or 8 years old, so I'm a little schoolgirl right now. He knocks at the door, open it up, and he's right there. He's got a little bit of the black eyeliner on or whatnot, all in black, and his wife was with him, and Kyler, and comes in the room. "Fran, Alice, great idea for a movie, man. Where am I sitting?" I'm like, "Right over here." Immediately calm my nerves. He's so down to earth.
He's the
And I've
coolest guy ever. Like what you see in interviews, that's really him.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
so smart and witty and
He's a great storyteller.
so good of it. And that's the most important thing in these documentaries. Because I talked to a lot of kids too. Like, what advice can you? I was like, man, yeah, the music and all that's cool in the background or whatnot, and all the images you're throwing up on the screen as far as archives, but you gotta have a story. Story is
Yeah.
number one, right? And Alice gets that. And a majority of the people that I interviewed for the film did too. Anybody that had a great story made the movie. But the only thing I was disappointed in, and sometimes they say never meet your heroes. In my mind, I thought Alice was Alice all the time. I didn't know there was a
Right, the
character
same guy you see on
yeah,
stage.
yeah. I was like, he's
Yeah.
gonna come through the door with a fucking severed baby's head with a knife through it, and that was not what I experienced at all. But it was pleasant. I wasn't disappointed at all. And
Yeah. Sorry to shatter your image.
yeah. But I've got to meet him several times since, and he's always just been just a wonderful human being. So when you did the audition, did you do it did he hand pick you or did somebody recommend you?
You know, there actually wasn't a formal audition, or I joke that I did an audition and I didn't even know it. It was when I got called to do the recordings, the redos that I told you about a few minutes ago.
Right.
Alice wasn't there. As a session player, sometimes you rarely meet the artist you're playing for. It's you, the producer, maybe another one or two of the musicians involved. But no, I did that session where I had to redo everything. Alice sang over it, did his thing, and then a year later, they asked Bob Ezrin to produce the show. And he said,
Hmm.
cool, but he wanted to make some lineup changes, a couple of people. and he brought in Tommy Hendrickson, who had gotten me on the recording sessions, and then he suggested me too. Bob suggested, well, what about Glenn that played on the recordings? And Alice said, well, I uh, I sang over his tracks. He obviously gets the vibe of the music, but I got to see him. My drummer's got to be flashy. He said something like that. So
Yep.
Tommy pulled up some YouTube video of something of me probably doing some stick flips, whatever, and then vouching for me like I'm not crazy, I'm not an alcoholic, all that stuff, vouching for your character. And based on that, Alice said, okay, that's the guy. And Tommy called me up, woke me up 2 hours earlier here in LA, and he said, yo, in his New York ad, you want to do this Cooper gig? And I was like, absolutely, yeah, man, let's do it. And he went, all right, you're in, click. And well, you
Oh
don't
my
go click with a cell phone, but you know what I'm saying.
Right, right.
He basically got me on the gig, and I met Alice on the first day of rehearsal.
Oh wow.
Crazy. Like,
Very
hi,
crazy.
I'm your new drummer.
Amazing. What a cool
Yeah.
story.
So it's a probationary period. So I wanted to come in just over prepared, like I always do.
Right. Well, that's another thing about a hired gun, man. You got to come in and know what time it is. Don't fuck up,
Yeah,
because sometimes you only got one chance, because then you put doubts in the star's mind, right?
totally. You have to exceed expectations when it's a new batch of people.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
and another thing, not only exceeding those expectations, but you just said it earlier, like Alice wanted to know what your character was like and make sure you're not
Yeah.
a fuck up.
Yeah.
How critical, because I've toured too, man, and one cancer cell can just spread and ruin it for everybody. How critical is the hang? Like, you can hang with this team here for months on end.
It's 50% easy.
Hmm.
50, you got to play, of course. All kinds of people can play. Well, you got to look the part, the playing and looking the part, looking like you fit. That's 25 and 25. The other 50 is the hang.
Yep.
I'll say that any day of the week because you're going to be living with people on the road. If you're in a van touring together, you're like this close to each person
Yep.
all day, every day for 24 hours almost.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and then you might be on a bus with no hotels, or you graduate to a bus with hotels. Okay, now you can get away from people, but you might have to double up. And then you get to, okay, everyone gets their own hotel room every day. Then you can really step away. But still, you're still living together, you're working together. It's a very unusual lifestyle. And people find out that maybe it's not what they thought it would be. Or then again, it's amazing what you can get used to.
Right. Were you a bottom, middle, or top bunk?
Bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't have the middle stuff. We have the condo
Condo
bunks.
bunks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's like a humble brag, right? A tour
Dude,
bus because
that's a
The band is split over two buses, so my bus is like four people. So we get to stretch out, and it's calm and peaceful. And then the other bus with the other guys in the band, they could play poker, and they could
yeah.
watch the football game after and be all loud. I'm like, good. I don't have to hear that. I'm just tired after a show. I'm the guy that works the hardest in the band. We always argue about that, and we're all gonna wear Fitbits one of these days during a
Yeah.
show. But yeah,
I
I
was gonna
just
say
want to
that.
chill post show, and our bus is it's chill.
Yeah, that's cool. Speaking of Fitbit and being fit, being a drummer and having that stamina for I don't know how long Alice shows are, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours probably, but you're doing a shit ton of shows. This guy does not rest. What kind of a physical toll has that taken on your body?
Well, when I first got the gig and word went out, there's a friend of mine that said, "Oh, Alice Cooper, that's a really physically demanding gig." I wasn't quite sure what that meant, but I figured it out pretty quick because an Alice show, it could be an hour and a half, hour 40, whatever we're doing. He doesn't break character. He doesn't talk to the audience between songs at all. So it's one song into the next, into the next, into the next, with a couple of breaks later in the set. There's a 2 minute break when Nita does her guitar solo. I cherish that 2 minutes so much. But that's part of what that meant. And it's just a high energy show. The songs are pretty busy. If you think about Under My Wheels and Billion Dollar Babies, there's a lot of notes going on.
There are. Muscle of Love.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, we haven't
just
played that one in a while. I like that one.
yeah, love that. And you talking about Dennis Dunaway on the bass. My
Yeah,
God, that bass line in that song is insane. So
yeah,
when
it's a hard hitting gig, and when I've done other gigs where the singer does talk to the audience, I'm like, wow, this is great. I love this. A breather, you know.
is it like that with the vampires, or does he just go one
Yeah.
right after the other?
Alice is not in the Alice character on the Vampires. He likes to joke and say that that's the world's most expensive bar band, even
Yeah,
though we have full on production with video screens and everything. But he does talk to the crowd, and then he sings the lion's share of the songs, but Joe Perry sings two or three, Johnny sings two or three, and it's more chill of a gig. Yeah.
that's so cool. Do you guys do any Aerosmith songs?
Yeah. The last run we did Walk This Way with Alice singing it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Alice doing Aerosmith. And we've done Sweet Emotion, one of my favorites. We've done a more deeper cut called Combination.
Hmm.
Yeah, which is a fun one that Joe likes to play. And maybe a couple others here and there. I mean, Steven Tyler has joined us when we've done some of these other charity gigs where I'm part of the house band. And so Aerosmith's one of my favorite all-time bands. So it's one of those things like you were talking about earlier, like, whoa, I'm playing Aerosmith with the original guys. This is crazy.
Right. So for Aerosmith, rocks or toys in the attic?
I mean, maybe Toys in the Attic, you know, you're asking tough questions now. I
I
didn't know it
know.
was gonna get this hard. Like the song Toys in the Attic is so great. That guitar riff
Yeah.
is just like so memorable. Joe Perry and Brad Whitford, they're the riff
Yeah.
kings.
Oh yeah. I got to say, I love rocks.
Great stuff.
That's a great record, man. Um, Playing with Alice, what is the most Cooper-esque thing that ever happened to you on stage?
Oh man, I mean, happened to me or to the band. It could be a dangerous gig. What Alice half jokingly tells band members is that when you join, you're gonna see the world and you're gonna get stitches. And
God.
yeah, so Billion Dollar Babies. This was I remember the show. This was in Oslo in 2011. We were opening playing with Iron Maiden. Alice has this fencing sword in in Billion Dollar Babies. And the band stays far back, and Alice is doing his thing. He looks like a really great guy that can fence. But Tommy, with his leather vest on, he got stabbed by the sword.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the leather vest saved him, but he had to get some stitches for real.
Oh my god. Was Alice
Yeah.
Cooper, was he super apologetic, or was he just
Oh, yeah.
like, "Part of the gig,
Absolutely.
dude"?
No,
Yeah?
of course he was. Yeah. And Nita has been hit like Alice has the cane, and sometimes he bangs the cane on the front of the riser of the stage. But one time the cane broke off and it hit Nita right in the head. It's on video. It's like, whoa, everyone in the audience kind of like thought she was okay, but she kept playing Trooper, you know.
Yeah.
And well, me, I had stitches because I had to get neck surgery in 2012. You know, just from playing and headbanging so much. I don't headbang as much anymore, but
Right.
I got my stitches.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Has the Frankenstein ever come close to tripping and falling on you?
No, you know, I've never even thought about it until now. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, no. Kyler, who you mentioned earlier, he was doing that for years. He got really good with that suit.
Right.
Yeah. And whoever else replaced him, the other one or two guys, they get used to it. And I guess it's pretty easy to manipulate. It would be pretty disastrous if they tripped, but it would be quite a memorable YouTube clip.
Right. So you mentioned Alice playing, with Iron Maiden, and I know you guys did a tour with Mötley Crüe,
Yeah.
and I have a photo here. There it is. That's you on Tommy Lee's drum kit.
Yeah. That is, I think that's the end of the show, whereas the double encore, like the second encore, the whole band walks and is accompanied by security and goes out to this sort of satellite stage that's
Hmm.
behind the mixing board area. And the stage rises on what looks like a conveyor or hydraulics. And that's what I think that is. But that's when I subbed for Tommy Lee for a week. That was crazy.
Man, talk to me about that for a minute. So he got injured on the gig, right?
Yeah. Robert Long, he was their production manager. He's done production managing for Kiss. I first met Robert like in 2001. I was out with Beautiful Creatures. He was out with Marilyn Manson when we had done some shows with them. And he was known as one of the best in the business. And he was just a guitar tech back then. So it was no surprise that he had risen to the top of designing shows for these bands. So, but a lot of those guys in that camp, they're jokers. So
Mm.
Robert calls me in my hotel room in Buffalo at like noon. I had just gotten out of the shower, and he's like, "Dude, I got to talk to you. Can you fill in for Tommy Lee tonight for the show?" I swear to God, my first thing I said back to him was, "All right, come on, who's fucking with me?" Like I wasn't having it,
Right.
and yeah, he said, "No, I guarantee you, this is serious. This is a real thing." He hurt his wrist, like he had a flare up of tendonitis,
Mm.
and there was 5 shows to go on that leg of tour, and I ended up covering all 5. And there was still a part of me. I told Robert, I said, "Okay, send a runner to the hotel or with a van. Send them to get me as soon as you can. Have Josh, that was their sound guy, or rather, blanking on their sound guy's name now. Have their sound guy make me a board mix on a thumb drive, and I got to sit in a production office and chart out the show, make cheat sheets."
Right.
But when the guy brought me to the venue in the van, I'm still thinking, I'm not 100% that this is real. Like, I'm going to get there and they go, "Ha, ha, ha, got you." But now my drum tech texts me back. He's like, "Yeah, it's real. I just found out." So, yeah. And we didn't rehearse anything at sound check. Uh,
Oh
uh,
God.
Tommy's tech, Nick, and my tech, Mike, they just had to scale my kit down between sets. And the entire audience, they didn't know that Tommy wasn't going to be playing. And so we played 3 songs in a row at the top of the show. It was Girls, Girls, Girls to open, into Wild Side, into Primal Scream, I think. And then Vince said something. He said, "Well, I think you could see something's different up here tonight. We don't have Tommy." And boo! Everyone.
Oh.
No, I expect it was their
Yeah.
farewell tour. So
Uh.
I'd be disappointed too if Tommy wasn't there. But I'll
Right.
tell you, I won them over every night because I stayed true to the parts. Nobody plays like Tommy Lee. Every drummer sounds different.
Right.
Tommy is incredibly integral to the sound of that band, more than people realize, I think, because he's a spectacular drummer. And I stayed true to the parts, and the band was nothing but cool. Tommy was so gracious, and it couldn't have gone better. And I had the cheat sheets, a music stand on stage, because there's a lot of distractions with a Mötley Crüe show. I'm trying to not lose my place in songs while bombs are going off next to the drum
Right.
set. Or Nikki Sixx has a flamethrower bass on "Shout at the Devil" back then. They had a lot of the pyro people that had worked with Rammstein. It was a lot of stuff going on, and
That is
and it was
so
great. I
cool.
was doing both sets every night for a week.
Wow. Talk about stamina, man, because some of
Yeah.
those Tommy Lee moves, not easy to pull off.
Well, the trick I found was don't cool down between sets. That half hour between, don't cool down.
Just keep moving.
Yeah,
Okay.
treat
Yeah.
it like one long thing.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Robert, the production manager. I kind of know him a little bit. Mötley Crüe and I want to say Poison played Atlanta at the Lakewood Amphitheater, and the guy's a brilliant stage production type guy, right? Like
Yeah,
building these sets. And I was hired by him or his company, one, to shoot the show. He goes, "I just want you to put on a big fisheye lens, stand in front of the stage, and shoot the whole show, all the different scenes that are coming out." I was like, okay. So they gave me a photo pass, and it says entire show, right? Because usually, as you know, you get to shoot the first 3 songs, and they kind of bounce you from the photo pit. So I'm sitting there, I'm taking pictures, coming out great, fire, cool videos or whatnot. And Nikki Sixx sees me and nobody tells him that I'm shooting the whole show. And he was not pleased to see me in the photo pit. And he points at me, goes, "What are you doing?" I showed him my pass. He's like, "I don't give a fuck. Get him out of here," you know? So I got wrangled out. First time in my career has ever happened in 25, 30 years. And I go to Robert. I'm like, "Well, I just got bounced because Nikki saw me and didn't know." He goes, "Oh man, I'm so sorry." He goes, "I must have not told him, don't worry about it."
Happens.
It happens, and I'm sure he's doing it. Nikki was doing it out of protection for the band, because the reason you only shoot the first 3 songs, because after 3 or 4 songs, the band's sweaty, makeup's running, da 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 da. They don't want don't want those pictures out, right?
Yeah, that tour, I think that was a while ago. Mötley and Poison. I remember when they did that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had my son with me too, man. It was crazy.
Nice. Well, that it was a cool thing for me. It was another one of like the examples you're talking about of like, how did this happen? How did I get here? Because like I'm from LA. I'm born and raised, and Mötley is an LA band. They started at the Whiskey and all those venues. And I was in a band in high school with guys that are my best friends to this day. And we used to play backyard parties, and we'd play Mötley songs here and there.
Wow.
And yeah, so I texted one of my best friends that afternoon. I couldn't tell him what was going on yet, but I said, "You're not going to believe what's happening tonight." And I left it at that. And yeah, it was just one of those moments. And it involved a skill set that had reading music, but I had done something about 5 years prior to that really set up the confidence level to pull that off. I had done the same thing, filling in last minute on a tour with a guy named Vasco Rossi out of Italy,
Yep.
and he's the biggest. He's the biggest rock artist in that country. Like it's all stadiums and arenas. Kenny Aronoff's done the gig. He's always had American drummers, so I was familiar with who he was. And in 2010, I got called last minute to fly to Italy and fill in for Matt Logg, actually, who's in AC/DC now. And yeah, Matt's an incredible player with a super impressive resume. Great, great buddy, great guy. He had an injury, and I filled in 5 weeks on that run. And so when the Mötley thing came up, it's like, okay, I've done this before. I got this. I got this.
Right.
Confidence is key.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So saying stadiums like that, would you rather play stadiums, theaters, or clubs?
I mean, it's all relative. I mean, you play enough arenas, whatever, it's amazing. But then you play a club, it's like, oh, this is great. People are 10 feet away from us. And it's just,
Right.
it's a good change of pace. It's a lucky thing that we get to do that. And I'll tell you, it's funny you mentioned that. We have this thing, we call it the SAC Club, SAC, because in 2020, February of 2020, right before everything shut down, we did an Australia run, Australia, New Zealand. And in the space of less than 24 hours, we played a stadium, an arena, and a club. We played at Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney. And then right after, 4 of us out of the band, we did an after hours gig at Frankie's Pizza in Sydney. And then the very next day, we did the bushfire benefit at Sydney's ANZ Stadium, which was like a Live Aid thing. Everyone does 20 minutes. Queen headlined, and we're like, whoa, we just did this in 24 hours. We did Stadium Arena Club. Pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to see Alice jump up on stage to some of these club gigs or wherever. I remember you were there too at Nita Strauss's wedding, and
fun wedding.
I remember. What's that?
Fun wedding.
Fun wedding, man.
Yeah.
Alice gets up. I guess you guys had schools out and 18 or whatnot. I was just like, is this happening? Like, this is
I think Josh, her husband, played on I'm 18, and then I got up and we did Back of the USSR.
Yes.
The Beatles that Alice likes doing. Yeah, he loves that. I love that song. And then a little later, I remember Pete Thorne, amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
He's played with like Chris Cornell and Don Henley. He was there, and we did "Jump" by Van Halen. But then the bass drum beater came
I
out.
remember that.
The
Yeah.
drummer in the band had to get up, and I'm standing up playing while he's fixing the drum set.
I may
And,
have video of that actually
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah. I
I'll have to
shared
see if
that,
I
dude. I
can.
thought it was hilarious because we didn't stop
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah. No. And then I remember David Draymond got up and did
Yeah,
a Metallica song. Yeah. It was a
right.
lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Not your typical wedding.
Yeah. If your drumsticks could talk, what would they say after a show?
Man, they'd say, "Keep it up. We can take it."
Yeah. Who's
Yeah.
your drum company, by the way? Give them a shout out. Your drumstick
Yeah,
company.
DW Drums since 2016. They're right local in Oxnard,
Mm-hmm.
right near me, 20 minutes away. I've been with Vader Drumsticks now 5 years, and Sabian Cymbals since '07. Gibraltar Hardware, Humesenberg Cases, Evans Drumheads. Yeah, drum industry people. It's a pretty tight family, and it's great to see the same faces over and over again. You know, you go to the NAM trade show,
Yeah.
and the people that do artist relations and sales, they're pretty consistent over the years. I got a lot of good friends in the drum industry, and I'm happy to be able to stick with companies for a number of years like that.
Yeah. The NAM show is so much fun. I remember
Yeah,
way back in the day, like 15, almost 20 years ago, you'd be walking around and you'd look over to the left and there's Eric Clapton and Paul
yeah,
Stanley in full makeup and costume, just walking down the aisle, going to a signing or whatnot. And now
yeah.
it's a little scaled back, but you can still meet
Still
some
get
really cool people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you still get a good mix of people walking around. And I was actually at the last one. I think I saw you there.
Hmm.
And yeah, same old
Really
NAM to a degree.
Yeah. With your drum solo you performed in Hired Gun, which is a standout, like people still talk about it today, all these years later. If you had to battle another drummer in a drum solo war, who would you like that competition to be and why?
I don't know, that whole thing about drum battle, everyone's so different, you know? I mean, that's a big thing now. It's like battle,
Yeah.
and it's like a
Yeah.
rap battle or something,
Right.
like it's the end of 8 Mile, the movie,
Yeah.
but it's with drums. I don't know. Drummers have this thing where we like to share ideas, and we're just open about that. We like discussing drums and sitting down with two kits and jamming out. And it just becomes like kind of a call and answer or back and forth. Some people call it a battle, but there's friends of mine that I do that with sometimes, and it's a blast. And I mean, I would just love to do that kind of call and answer thing with someone like Steve Smith. He's such
Oh
a big
God.
influence of mine. I'm actually going to see him tomorrow night at the world famous Baked Potato in North
Oh my
Hollywood in
God. He's
Studio
playing the
City.
baked potato. Wow.
Yeah, he's doing a few nights in a row, and I've gone to see his jazz gigs for a lot of years. He's a big
Yeah.
influence. My first ever pro gig was Tony McAlpine, who's an incredible shredding guitar player and amazing classical pianist, but he's one of the pioneers in the sort of shredding neoclassical guitar genre.
Hmm.
So the very first record I ever did was Tony McAlpine. Tony's first record he ever did was Steve Smith on drums.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and because Steve was the perfect guy to bridge metal and fusion in a way. And so I had that record, I was familiar with it. And one day one of my mentors, Greg Bissonette, called me and said he had recommended me to McAlpine, and I got the gig.
Wow. Wow. That is so cool. Funny thing, I toured with the band Stained for 7 or 8 years, right? In the
Wow.
studio, on tour, like everywhere. And Mike Mushok, the
Oh
guitar
yeah.
player,
He was a
took
student.
lessons. He
Yeah.
was one of his students. Yeah, he
Right.
raved about him. He goes,
In
"Man, Tony."
Massachusetts.
Yes. Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mike's a great player. Yeah.
Oh man, I think he's a underrated player, to be honest with you. Some of this,
He,
and he's a tiny guy, and his hands are so small. And he plays that big ass baritone guitar, 7 string, and the notes that he makes, because he invents these notes that I've never heard before. So we're in the studio while they're recording, and even the producer Johnny K is like, "What the fuck are you doing? how does you don't have arthritis, like, because his hands are just like, I can't even make it's nuts, man.
He was playing in Santa Sonia too, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they did some shows with us in Europe. That's where I met
Yeah.
him. Yeah,
Yeah. Nicest guy ever, man. Love that guy so much.
way cool.
Um, yeah. Do you have any like cool pre-show rituals or superstitions that you do before you go out?
Nothing really superstitious. I just am such a creature of habit. I make sure and do a warm up. I mean, maybe with sticks on a pad or a pad kit, but a warm up for my muscles up in here,
Mm,
shoulders, neck, upper back. I use a heating pad to get things nice and warmed up and loose. And I do a bunch of motion exercises, and then I stretch the neck and do all these different things. I've just been really consistent about that, and on tour trying to work out in a hotel gym however many times a week I can, and going for walks, power
mhm.
walks every day. Yeah, all that stuff is so important. I mean, the show itself is cardio, but you can't just let that be your only cardio. And if I work out and do some weights, not a crazy workout in the day, when I do that, my body feels more warmed up for the show at night.
That's cool. Speaking of
Yeah,
the show and Alice again, because he's a character when he's on stage.
yeah.
When does that character happen? Is it when he's putting his makeup on, he's Alice Cooper now, or is it
Yeah.
when he's on stage immediately? Does he transform?
It's on stage, like boom, he's Alice. He is in character. He sells it like no one else, and he can get away with things that others can't because
Right,
he's able to slip into character so well. And Cheryl Cooper too. His wife Cheryl, she's
right.
in the show. She was in the show in 1976 as a dancer. That's how they met.
Yeah,
They,
on the
they
Welcome
fell
to
in
My
love.
Nightmare tour. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is crazy. And if
yeah.
nobody's ever seen his documentary, man, it is a master class in documentary filmmaking.
That's a good documentary. Yeah,
It is super duper
and
Alice Cooper. Yeah, it is so well made, man.
yeah,
Because I, I
they know
dreamed.
showbiz.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I dreamed of doing Alice Cooper's documentary. When I watched it, I was like, they got this handled. There's nothing I
yeah.
could do that would make this thing any better. It was
Yeah,
really good.
it tells a good story, and it just shows how much of a connection there is to so many other showbiz icons through Shep Gordon, manager. Like Groucho Marx was somebody that Shep managed, and Groucho was a fan of Alice. He thought it reminded him of like vaudeville.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
a lot of
crazy.
stories between Alice and Bob Ezrin and Shep Gordon. There are just infinite amazing stories.
I remember I
Yeah.
interviewed Bob Ezrin for Hired Gun Man, and
Oh yeah,
you know, it didn't serve the purpose for the film, but he was telling me stories about Kiss and Pink Floyd and Roger Gilmer, like
yeah.
struggling sometimes to come up with stuff. I'm like, really? That's weird,
Everybody gets
and
writer's block.
right, for sure,
Yeah.
man. It's funny. I saw you last October, and for the people, I just give some. I live in Oklahoma now. I moved from Calabasas and Santa Monica this
Mhm.
past year. But I saw you with my best friend Todd, who was the executive producer of Higher Gun in a little teeny weeny town called Enid,
Right.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, where the fuck is Enid?
You
There's
didn't
just
even know.
I didn't even know, man. I've been to Oklahoma City, like,
Yeah.
and where Todd lives in Arcadia, which is, a nice little suburb. But we go there, and Alice at an auction, he collects all kinds of memorabilia, but he had a photo of Alice when he was young, and he had a Coke bottle stuck up to his nose, like he's snorting the Coke out of a
Wait,
Coke bottle.
this is Todd that had this?
Yeah, yeah, the
Yeah, yeah.
photo,
We
and
we know Todd. Yeah, Todd always
yeah,
comes out to shows. Cool
yeah, yeah,
guy.
and the photo signed Vincent Fernay or whatever. What's his last name? His real
Yeah,
last name?
his original name, Vincent Fernier. Yeah.
Fernier, yeah. And I was just like, you have to get this thing authenticated. And I think one of the runners or whatnot took it back to Alice, and Alice is like, "Oh yeah, every couple hundred signatures, I'll sign my real name."
Oh
You know?
wow. Maybe I've
Yeah,
heard him say that before.
Yeah,
Now
and
that you
then he
mention
signed,
it.
he signed an Alice Cooper across the top of it. Now he's got both the character's name and his birth name, which who else has that?
Yeah, that's a
Probably not many
rarity.
people. Yeah, it's crazy. Um,
Too cool,
this was
man.
a question I just asked you. Have you ever had a gear malfunction mid-show that forced you to improvise? And you just told me at the wedding, but on the big stage, has
Yeah.
that ever happened?
Oh, hey, you're gonna tour, play 80 to 100 shows a year. There's gonna be occasional mishaps, but you know what? With my drum tech, Mike Miller, he's been
Mm,
on with me as long as I've been on the Alice gig. There are minimal problems. I mean, a problem could be like a drum head breaks,
right,
like a bottom snare head. But okay, big deal. You just got to like play on the tom while he replaces the snare, and it's just part of being a professional. You got to deal with this stuff. There hasn't been any terrible mishaps I could think of on that gig. Like there's a cymbal stand broke once, where like the metal cracked and the cymbal landed on the floor. Tom, I'm like, oh, cool. That's something
oh
the
god,
audience doesn't see every day. But
no,
you learn to deal with it, and you try to see it as a challenge to work around it, I guess.
right,
I mean, there's
right,
other mishaps that could happen with sound issues with the in-ear monitors and things, but again, you deal with it, and 99.9% of the time that stuff doesn't happen when you have a good crew that takes care of the gear and knows how to set up and break down the best way possible, even how to wrap a cable the best way possible.
right.
There's a lot that goes into being a crew person for a band. It's not just a roadie. They're called techs now.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's a guilty music pleasure that would shock most of your fans?
Dua Lipa.
Oh,
I
okay.
think. Yeah, I think she's got great songs. Whoever's writing the songs lately, man, I'm like, oh well, who's this? And I'll do the thing on
The
the phone
search.
where it tells you, and it's like, oh, it's Dua Lipa again. Yeah, I thought so. Like her
Yeah,
song "Levitating" is really great. It's got a great groove. Do you know the song I'm talking about?
of course. Yeah.
Okay. I just thought people might be surprised. It's
No,
it's
it's a great song.
great production, great hooks. I like that song "Physical." She's
Hmm.
got, yeah, a lot of good stuff. It's
So I
impressive.
have to ask you, this because even my son, we talk about this a lot. My son Zach, because we're purists, right? When I'm listening to an album or a song, I want the instruments to sound like real, like the person's playing in the next room. Like when you listen to AC/DC Highway to Hell, it sounds like it's in the next room,
Yeah,
right? In today's music, it's just so processed, so to the grid with a click. You know what
yeah.
I mean? There's no push or pull or feel. What is your take on that?
Well, yeah, that's a broad subject, right? You mentioned AC/DC. I mean, that a record like that, Highway to Hell, Back in Black, they're big, but they're very dry sounding in
Yep.
a good way. And everything feels like you're up close to it. And part of that is the production, and the band was tracking live in the room. And I played on a record that came out not long ago that Mutt Lang produced. And the drums sound like Mutt Lang drums, more like Def Leppard, because he did Pour Some
Yeah.
Sugar, Hysteria. But this artist, it's Crossbones Scully. It's like AC/DC with more Def Leppard style production. But the cymbals, the hi-hat, he really wanted the hi-hat to stand out in a certain way with no compression. That's
Mm,
getting more technical now, but I thought, oh, good. He wants it to sound more real. But the snare, the kick, they do have that more Def Leppard, a
right.
little bit of synthetic mixed with live. But I was really happy with how the drums came out, since you mentioned AC/DC. But that was like a benchmark back in the
Mm.
day, those records, for how
Oh
they
yeah,
sounded.
for
But,
sure.
but
So
today,
we're
they're not trying to make records like that. They're doing it on the grid, like you're talking about.
yeah. To me,
And
it's just it
it,
bums me
it's
out, man.
it could take the soul out of something when you start hearing with your eyes on a computer screen and
Right.
looking for things to line up. There's so many records. Like if you took that exact performance of that record from the 70s or early 80s, if you took it and you put it into a digital domain, in Pro Tools, suddenly someone's going to say, oh, well, we got to fix this. We got to line it up artificially and quantize. It's like, no, but you're going to like destroy it. You
Right.
know, the feel, it's going to suck the soul right out of it. Some records, you feel that tempo pushing, and it's like, yeah, that's tension. You don't want to have it be reined in by this exact tempo it has to remain at, but that's how stuff is made today, for better or worse, and we all deal with it as musicians. And it's rare that the band will be in the room together tracking. I do it here and there, but it's more rare.
Yeah. What Alice Cooper track do you enjoy playing live the most? Is it a deep cut? Is it one of the hits? Like,
It could be both. I really like "Feed My Frankenstein," which
yeah.
is a hit. It's like kind of the only song in the set, or one of the only songs that's got a more funky syncopated thing happening with it. And I really like, well, you mentioned Muscle of Love earlier. We haven't
Yeah.
done that in a while, but I like that one a lot. Billion Dollar Babies is great. Such a
Oh, yeah.
classic drum part. And there's not any that are not fun. It's all a blast. It's all great crowd pleasing tunes. School's Out is so iconic, and
Oh,
people
God.
know it so well, and we have fun with that one.
Yeah. What about, does he ever, I was talking to one of the previous guitar players in Alice, and he told me that sometimes Alice will come in or call everybody on a group text or whoever's texting. Hey, let's learn this song and put it in the set tomorrow.
That could happen occasionally. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
and as a drummer, it's like, holy shit, now I gotta learn, I gotta learn the song overnight on the fly. Let's say it's a song like Halo of Flies, one that's really difficult, like a crazy song.
that's not going to be a last minute type of song.
No,
You,
okay.
you just picked like the holy grail of Alice
Right.
songs for like the hardcore fans. Like when I first got the gig, all these people were like talking to me about it, and a lot of questions were asked. And I'd hear, "Oh, you're gonna do Halo of Flies?" Honestly, I didn't know it, and then I realized, oh, this is like 5 songs in one. It's this 7 minute
Yeah.
epic, and it was Alice and the band, the original band, saying, "Hey, we could be weird and progressive too. Check this out." But that was part of the very first tour I did with Alice, so I came in knowing that one inside and out.
Yeah. That's a great song. That album Killers is one of my favorite of his too, along with Love It
It's
to Death,
classic.
and
Yeah, it's classic
so good.
stuff.
Yeah.
There have been times where we'll add a song, and we'll of course rehearse it at sound check, or maybe a couple sound checks, and then throw it into the live set. But part of being in this business is you've got to learn tunes last minute.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
just
I
going to
mean,
happen. And
gotta
people are going
have
to expect you to have it together on short notice. And a lot of artists, with other artists, they don't realize how difficult their own songs can be because they've done them for so long. It's
right.
like, well, learn this. Doesn't everybody know the song? Can't you just learn it like that? I've done it for 40 years. It's like, well, we got to take a second to do this. And, but it's part of the challenge.
Right.
I'm not
Let's
naming
see.
names.
Oh, I know. I know. If you could build your dream fantasy band with any musicians, live or dead, a five-piece, who would be in your band?
I'm in it, man. I'm in that kind of band. We
Yeah.
have the best time. Yeah, there's always those dream artists that you want to play with. I never did get to play anything with Jeff Beck live,
Mm,
although I did play with him on the Hollywood Vampires record, the last studio record. But of course, it wasn't tracked together. But
right.
yeah, there's always people you wish you could play with or could have played with. But the band I'm in, it's pretty damn fun, because we take on some great challenges and back up different people, and we all pull it together collectively.
Right. Do you have any favorite non-musical hobbies that feed your creativity behind the drum kit?
I mean, fitness, I like to do that when I'm home or on the road. Takes your mind off of things.
Mm,
And I don't know if that feeds creativity necessarily, but it keeps you going.
yeah. What other, like, non-musical stuff, like what hobbies, what activities you're doing besides working out or whatnot? Are you a movie guy or going
Yeah,
out to dinner every day guy? Like, what's your deal?
I'm a movie guy. I mean, there's not as many things happening in theaters these days. It's more
Yeah.
going to be at home on streaming services.
Right.
But yeah, sure, sure. I love so many genres of movies. It's definitely something to do on tour, on the tour bus with those long drives. They have like hard drives on tour buses filled with hundreds and hundreds of movies that you could
I
choose
remember,
from.
yeah, especially in Europe, they have those hard drives,
Yeah,
1,000 movies, you know,
yeah.
it's pretty cool. If you could instantly master one instrument besides the drums, what would that instrument be and why?
Oh, guitar. Not that that'll ever happen, but there's just certain guitar leads that you hear where you think, oh, that makes me wish I was a guitar player to hear that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What's something about touring that people romanticize but actually sucks?
The amount of travel it takes to get from point A to B. You know, there's that old saying that you're getting paid for the other 22 hours of the day
Yep.
that you're not on stage. And that is so true. The playing part is the fun part, but all the traveling, and sometimes there's airport chaos where a connecting flight is late, so you got to run to the gate to catch the next flight, and uh, or just general chaos of being on no sleep, and now you're in this airport, you're crowded on one of those trams that's taking you, and you got to hang on to the thing, and people are bumping into you, and you're on no sleep, and it's like, yeah, this is the gig, this is what you get paid for.
Yep.
And there's
I
people that
remember,
would kill to do it. I'm not complaining at all. This is
no,
what it
man,
is.
I remember my first 3 or 4 years of touring. It was like going to Disneyland every day. And then pretty soon, I mean, you're getting paid well or whatnot, but it's very difficult to hold a relationship together, right? You
Can
miss
be
your
for some
home.
people.
Yeah, if you're home for a bit, then you're gone for 10 weeks. Then you're home for just a couple days, and you're gone another 10 weeks. Because there's times when and I'm sure the same with you, man. I would finish one tour, literally. I'll never forget it. Rocklahoma. Years ago, I was touring with Stained, and they played on a Friday night, and that was the end of the tour for Stained. Everyone was going home, and then Seether hired me, and they were
Oh,
playing Saturday night, the start of their tour for 6, 7 weeks. So it was like I didn't get to go home. I just bounced from one bus to the next, ongoing, and that wasn't the end. The tour ended with them in Tampa, Florida. Then I go out with Nickelback for another 8 weeks.
wow.
So 3 tours, no going home. I was a
That's a lot.
disaster. Yeah, it was bad.
What you're describing is a lot more common for people that aren't playing the shows.
Yeah,
You're
crew
doing,
guys. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, you're doing video and different things. You could definitely jump around. If, I mean, that means you're awesome at your job because look how in
yeah,
demand you are. People wanted you to jump
yeah,
on, and you're a great hang. I mean, that's half the game,
yeah.
and you get what the gig is.
It's
So,
funny you say that because I was going to take a summer off after that tour, and I get a call from Zoltan from the band Five Finger Death Punch, and they're on their trajectory going up. And I was just fried, man. I'm like, I'm taking the summer off, And he was just like, "Hey, I heard you're the guy," I was like, "Oh, that's flattering, but I'm sorry to say I'm taking the summer off. I'm just completely brain dead." He goes, "Oh man, I hate to hear that. If you change your mind, hit me back up." Okay.
that's cool.
Couple weeks later goes by, he calls me again. Hey, I was just wondering if you any way you'd reconsider. I'm like, please don't take offense to this. I'm sure you guys are great. Da 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 da. But I gotta have some time. And a week goes by, and he calls again.
Oh man.
Yeah, he was like, we can't find anybody we really like. What is your fuck you number to get you out of here with us? So I thought about it for about 10 minutes while we're chatting, and I blurted out a number. I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to leave my home for the next however long, this is what I got to get paid. And I told him the number. He's like, I'll see you next week in Palm Springs for rehearsals. I'm like, fuck. But,
Hey, you
you
did it.
know, I did it, man. And it lasted 3 years, you know.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is say no. Makes
I
them want
know,
you
man.
more.
Yeah, I don't know. And I learned a lot on that tour of what not to do, you know,
Sure.
and that was never tour again. I get PTSD now if I hear a bus engine or a tractor trailer. I'm like, oh God, man. I don't know. That
Yeah,
was a rough.
The Alice camp is cool, and everyone gets along for the most part, which is a lucky thing because I know that
Yeah.
there's other camps out there. There's tension. It could be one person that's the
Yep.
cause of that, but no, everything is on the level, and it's usually a lot of laughs. It's work, but the crew guys work way harder than the band guys. They're getting there to the venue in the morning. Like they are last to leave at night. They drive all
Hmm.
night to the next venue, show up in the next venue, wake up and start setting up for that day. And us in the band, we mosey in at like 4 or 5 o'clock. So
Yep.
maybe sound check. Sometimes we don't even sound check anymore and do a
God,
show.
the band is that tight. No sound checks allowed.
Yeah. And the crew does a line check. Everything sounds relatively the same in the ears, and we're good to go. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm
We've
going to
done
ask
that
you
for
some.
festivals. Like we'll headline a festival or close to headlining, an evening spot playing for 50,000 people. And we don't even see our instruments until we step on stage.
Wow.
It's crazy, right? But we know it's going to sound the same, more or
Yeah.
less, and we're going to be fine.
And like you said, your tech's been with you for the whole 14 years,
Yeah.
so he knows how you want your kit set up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Mike is
great.
one of the best.
Yeah. So I'm going to just ask you a few this or that questions, just
Mm,
rapid fire stuff.
yeah.
Yep. Single kick or double kick?
Single kick with a double pedal, but I have the second bass drum. It's there, but there's not a pedal attached to it. Don't tell anybody that.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
It's
That
just
that
for
guy's
looks.
drummer's crazy online. They see a picture of that. That's a fake bass drum. He's not even using that. This guy sucks. Anything to, you
Yeah.
know, get all riled up.
Right. Um, okay, here's one. Playing live or studio sessions?
Both. I love both. I mean, live you get to put on a show. Studio, you're creating something from nothing, and you get to hear yourself under a microscope. You come out a better player for some reason or another, and it expands your horizons.
Right. Um, click track or just feeling it out?
Depends on the song.
Yeah.
Uh, there's maybe about half the songs on the Alice gig I'll play to a click just because I like to and it works. We don't have any backing tracks. Everybody's singing for real. But then other songs don't work with a click track, like School's Out and No More Mr. Nice Guy. They need to ebb and flow a little bit. You got to be
Right.
confident with both ways of what you asked.
Okay. Vinyl or digital?
Usually digital. I'm not one of those audiophiles where I'm like, oh, you got to have vinyl. It's just so much warmer sounding. I just
Right.
like picking up the phone and getting on Spotify and listening to something.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Recently during the pandemic started collecting vinyl again just for
Oh, yeah.
nostalgia and I was bored. I probably, oh man, 700 albums, one of
Wow.
them being Love It to Death. I'm like, well, I got to get a copy of this, and I
Oh,
found one
cool.
that was in near mint condition, like an original first pressing. And
Oh,
tomorrow, John Humphrey from the band Seether, who's the drummer, lives 2 blocks away from me. And
oh yeah.
he's a big vinyl collector. He's got thousands, super rare Kiss stuff and Rush and like test pressings from all this and that. But there's a huge record convention tomorrow in Dallas, Texas, which is about a
Oh yeah.
3-hour drive. Yeah. So I was just like, well, if the weather's not too shitty, maybe I'll drive down there and meet him. I don't know. It's supposed to rain all day tomorrow, but I'd love to go pick up some new vinyl.
It's
And
a big scene.
it's a huge show too.
Yeah.
Cowbell or tambourine?
Cowbell. I mean, I've had drum set tambourines that you hit with a stick on the drums, but nothing beats a good cowbell. And there's actually a lot of Alice songs that need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That are in the set. Yeah. Cold Ethel, Hey Stupid. Uh, and it's amazing how much you don't have to kill it and hit it really hard. It carries through the mics and it adds a lot
Yeah.
to the vibe.
Cymbal chokes or splash hits?
Cymbal chokes. I'm known for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing crazy, silly cymbal chokes, but it's just something that started by accident in high school. I just kept figuring out new ways of doing certain things that kind of became like a signature move, I guess you could say.
Right. A 4-piece kit or an octopus kit?
Both. If you can't make it happen on a four-piece kit, you can't make it happen. And if I'm
Hmm.
hauling a drum set around town here, it's going to be a 4 or 5 piece kit. And if you're going to play a giant kit with a bunch of drums, well, you better be able to play that 4-piece kit first, or all the drums in the world aren't going to help you.
Right. Agreed. New York Groove or LA Shine?
Are those songs like Ace Frehley covered New York Groove?
No, like an,
I
you
love
know,
that
New York.
song.
Yeah, it's a great tune. Yeah, great tune.
Yeah. There's a difference. There's an LA sound with session players, and there's a New York sound for
Hmm.
sure. It's hard to say the difference, but there is a difference.
That's wild. That's like the water and bagels in New York and whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a difference.
Snare a pie or low and tight?
Oh, it totally depends on the gig. Those type of AC/DC tunes, the record I mentioned did that Mutt Lang produced, that's low with a lot of dampening on it, like doosh,
Yep.
one of those, picture AC/DC or picture like Don Henley, the Eagles
Yeah.
playing One of These Nights, that snare sound. I like playing with that kind of tuning, but sometimes you need the high crack, snap, crackle, pop kind of sound to play a rim shot that really pokes through and pops through the layers of guitars.
Yep. Speaking of rim shots or ghost notes?
Both. You got to be able to do both simultaneously. It's the hills and valleys, man. You're talking
Right.
to a drum teacher.
You're right.
Yeah.
Old school rudiments or new school flash?
Well, you can't have new school flash without knowing your rudiments. You just can't. Rudiments are the language of drums. It's the words you use to put sentences together and how you express yourself. And don't skip the rudiments, kids.
Right.
Learn your rudiments. Learn your paradiddles and your flammacues and your Swiss triplets.
Speaking of that, are you teaching? Do you
Yeah,
teach?
a
Do
little
you
bit.
teach on
Yeah,
the do you teach on the road? I know that there's some guys out that like what's the guy that's playing with Kerry King now? Uh
Paul.
Paul.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Paul's a buddy. He
Yeah.
teaches. He teaches at the venues, which is
Hmm.
cool. And I haven't been able to do that, but I have done a lot of drum clinics when I'm on tour. Like if we're in town a day early, I might get booked to do a drum clinic at the
Mm,
local dealer. A lot of these dealers I've known for years and done
right.
clinics done clinics with them. Or I might even do it the day of the show. If it's a Saturday or Sunday show, it's kind of crazy. Do the drum clinic in the afternoon and then get to the venue. But yeah, I've done a lot of that. And I'll even sometimes do that plus a couple few private lessons at the shop.
No, that's cool.
But in town here, I teach a little bit. I had like one student yesterday, and I do that when I can fit it in.
That's cool. Uh Hi-hats closed tight or loose and dirty?
Hey, I mean, between that super tight and wide open, there's about 50 levels in between. You gotta
Right.
know how to use the most dynamic part of the drum set. That's the hi-hat. So all of the above.
Cool. Recording analog or digital?
I can't remember the last time I recorded analog. That's an eye opener when you do. I would love to do another session on analog because then you realize like you're a video guy, you'll appreciate this. This is my analogy. You
Okay.
tell me if this makes sense to you. Like you're working with video and there's all these different grades of video. Some things on these super HD TVs, it's so clear, it ends up ruining it. It looks too cheap,
Yep.
too clear, and it needs the grain to make it look better, right?
It's funny you say that because I didn't get to shoot any film on hired gun. On Ray's movie, however, we shot all the interviews uh, on digital on the red. And then we went to Detroit with Ray to talk about some really pivotal moments in his early childhood, like getting almost killed by the cops,
Oh,
walked around his neighborhood, and we shot it on film.
it's grittier.
And it worked. You
Yeah.
never know, and you can't see what you're shooting. I hadn't shot
Oh yeah.
film in decades. So we brought the whole package up and you can't see what you're shooting. So I brought a great DP with me who shot. So I had to put all the trust in his hands. And it was so cold, man. It was like 9 degrees. The batteries on the camera and everything was shot outside, everything we shot. the batteries were dying as quick as we could put them on. So we had to get a runner to go get hand warmers just to get another 2 minutes out of the battery, you know. But when I got the film back, we got them scanned and whatnot, the 4K, but it was a film print. It was like Christmas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you're putting these reels in, you're looking at them in the tight grain and like the skin tones are just
Yeah.
perfect. Like
Skin
there's not,
tones, all that.
yeah.
You realize the difference. I think when you're recording digital versus analog, analog has the hiss, which
Mhm.
digital doesn't. The hiss is similar to the grain as far as just making things sound better. It doesn't have to be the clearest thing you've ever heard. You know, if you
Right,
took some of these classic recordings and played the exact same parts in the exact same way, but it's digital, all of a sudden it just doesn't make any sense.
right,
It needed to be recorded that way. You know, Chuck Berry, Johnny Be Good, one of the first ever rock and roll songs. Well, the guitar is playing like kind of straight eighth notes, but the drums are ding, da, da, ding, doing like a jazz thing, and it's really clashing. But it's not so bad. I mean, it makes sense. But if you did that today digitally, it would just be like, no, that does not work. I don't know if
right.
that makes sense to people listening. It's just I think about these things. You know,
I do
you're
too,
opening a
man.
can of worms with this.
Yeah, it's weird because one of the only new bands I really, really dig, and they're not even new anymore. They've been around 8 or 9 years now, is a band called Ghost.
Yep.
And the reason I like them so much, the singer doesn't have a great voice, but he's got melody, right? He's tapped into the melody somehow, and it reminds me of like old Bluish or Cult, like 70s cult rock. And everything's just so melodic. The production's great. Some of it may be a little bit over the top, but yeah, it's insane.
We've done shows with them. I haven't been able to go out and watch the show, but my drum tech Mike has done some work with them. I think he helped build the drummer's kit a while
Okay.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've done great, that band.
They're
We've heard so
awesome.
many good things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm a huge fan. Yeah. Okay, here we go. This is gonna get weird.
All right. Am I able to do something while, or did I lose you?
Uh-oh, you lost me.
Uh, okay. I'm just doing okay. I got you
There you
back.
go.
There you go.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Metallica's Lars Ulrich or Slayer's Dave Lombardo?
What, you think you're like putting me on the spot here or something?
Yes. I do this
Nah.
with everybody. And it's
No.
not a knock on any of their drummers, but which do you prefer?
Right, but you're asking like a choice in a way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's really like the premise of the question I don't accept
Okay.
because it's such apples and oranges, you know?
Right.
Um, but look, both those guys, they're responsible for influencing so many kids to want to play drums in the first place.
Right.
You can't take that away.
No.
Um, when I was talking earlier about how it's not a bad thing necessarily to hear songs pushing and the tempo pushing,
Hmm.
like one of the things I had in mind when I was saying that was like Slayer, the way it just like pushes and the tension on those records. And I remember talking to Dave. I've met Dave Lombardo just once or twice.
Yeah.
Don't know him well, but I was like, yeah, those performances, if that was put on a grid, it would just not have the same energy. It would be tamed down. It was meant to be that way, the way those records were done. And same with a lot of the early Metallica. They were just getting in a room and playing together.
Yeah. Those early albums are so powerful. Okay, I won't put you on the spot, make you
I
go
don't care. Put me
Mercer.
on the spot. I can take
Oh,
it.
okay. Phil Collins or Don Henley?
Two singing drummers. Yeah, I would
Mm,
say Phil is a bigger influence of mine, but that doesn't discount Don Henley's influence. He's a really underrated drummer, but his feel on those Eagles records and the snare tunings, like I was talking about, it's
yep.
great. But Phil was such an influence, such an influence. Like the one of my favorite records ever is like that Genesis Three Sides Live.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because he did the double
Yep.
drumming with Chester Thompson.
So good.
Yeah.
Uh Morgan Rose from Seven Dust or Shannon Larkin?
Oh, both dudes that built the house of new metal.
Right.
And not just that genre, but yeah, Morgan Rose, again, another guy that's influenced a lot of kids that want to play drums. Super duper funky, syncopated, heavy grooves, and gotta love that. And Godsmack has a similar vibe. It's a different kind of band, but a
Mhm.
lot of tom heavy, tribal, big grooves, and yeah, those bands are both vehicles for the drummers to just go nuts.
Oh yeah.
So
Same thing with
yeah,
the Disturbed drummer Mike Wengren. I just saw them and
yeah,
Morgan Rose at Madison Square Garden last Friday night. I went
cool.
up and shot analog. I bought a Nikon
Oh,
F5
cool.
film camera, and yeah, they came out great. And then the next night, I saw this guy, Mike Portnoy or Rod Morgenstein.
Well, Rod predates Mike on the
Yep,
scene for sure. So first, I was really into Rod. I mean, there was the Dixie Dregs,
I saw
right,
them,
and the
dude.
Steve Morse band.
Yep,
You saw the Dregs, yeah, they were pioneers
yep,
for sure.
yep.
And yeah, I'm sure Mike is influenced by Rod in some way, like we all are. He was taking fusion and rock and metal and putting it all together. And Portnoy, he's killing it, man. He's back in Dream Theater, and we shared drum duties one night a little over a year ago on the Eddie Trunk 40th anniversary thing. We were both in like
Oh
these
yeah,
different core lineups, backing people up. That was a lot of fun. It's a good hang.
really good hang. Um, and the Dream Theater were great. They're doing their 40th anniversary tour or whatnot. It
Oh,
was at Radio City
oh,
Music Hall, which I'd never been to before, and that was just a treat. And the sound was amazing. It was just a great show. Liberty DeVito or Kenny Aronoff?
they have a lot of similarities, right?
They do. They're
Yeah,
both aggressive, like play to the song.
yeah. Well, Kenny has the career that's done. He's done so many things. He was Mellencamp 20 years, but then he was playing on everybody's records. I got to hand it to him for that. But Liberty is a huge part of those songs. Well, what's his
Mm,
saying? Like, Billy may be the father of those songs, but I'm at least the uncle,
Uncle,
right?
yeah, yep,
Yeah, I remember that's from the movie.
yeah,
I think that's well put, and they both have contributed a lot. One guy is known for one gig and tons of mega hits, and then Kenny, of course, for branching out and being on like the Kennedy Center Honors, the TV gigs.
yeah.
You
All the
know,
Oscars and the Grammy shows and all that kind of stuff. And it's cool.
yeah,
The cool thing about Liberty is not only he play on all those giant mass, The Stranger, 52nd Street, Glass Houses, all those,
yep,
but he also tours with the artist for 30 years.
yeah,
I mean, you don't hear that a
yeah.
lot.
It's very rare.
Very Chad Smith or Travis Barker?
Ah, you keep picking these guys. They're like, I put them in the genre of they've made people want to play drums.
Yeah,
Like Bonham, Neil Peart, and Travis. I think some of what he does gets overshadowed by the other things, the other stories, the people he's dated or whatever. The guy
right,
could play like nobody's business. Like he's got the marching band background, and I don't know. I think people sometimes might overlook that and think because somebody is like a tabloid figure that they're not a serious musician, but he totally is.
right.
And yeah, I've seen some of the rudimental things he's done. Speaking of rudiments, it's like, whoa, he is seriously a schooled percussionist. And then Chad Smith, like, what
Oh,
a homegrown feel he's got. He's done a lot of different records too. Like, did like the Dixie Chicks record and an Ozzy record, and he could play with a reckless abandon, but have it like be in time.
right. Yeah,
I
he's a
love that.
hard hitting drummer, man.
Yeah.
Hard hitting. Okay. Same person. I'm going to name one guy. Dave Grohl or Chad Smith?
Uh, Similar era of drumming, right?
Yep.
Both really heavy hitters, literally. Dave, it's another drummer turned singer turned frontman, but he still plays drums a lot. I really like that, and he's into genre hopping in a way. He's done stuff with Paul McCartney, which is cool, or Queens of the Stone Age.
Right.
I like the players. I like the fact that he's a rock star frontman of a band, but he still wants to play drums on different people's records.
Hmm.
You know, because you're going to grow from that. There's a record he did called Probot. You ever hear that
Oh
one?
yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a cool
But
record.
he played in a band from Philly called Scream back in the
I'm not
day.
familiar with
And
that.
they
Okay.
opened up for a place, God man, probably the size of a little Waffle House or something, called the Metroplex in Atlanta.
Mhm.
But Dave Grohl and Scream, he played drums in that band, opened for Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics.
Cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Nice.
Terry Bozzio or Stuart Copeland?
Oh man. Boy, talk about two unique original sounds on the drums. I mean, I'm probably more influenced by Terry, but then Stewart just under that. You know,
Yeah,
Terry did so many things where Stewart, you just okay, Police. That's Stuart Copeland. Terry was Frank Zappa, and he was UK that I mentioned earlier with Alan Holdsworth, and then uh, the violin player Eddie Jobson. Amazing. There's great UK footage on YouTube.
yeah.
Uh, the Brecker brothers that Terry did, Missing Persons, of course. I mean, I'm probably more influenced by him just by a little bit. But Stuart Copeland, once I got Synchronicity, I was like, oh my God,
Game
tastiest drummer
over.
I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't Terry play for a minute with Pat Benatar, or am I mistaken?
I don't know. It's possible.
I think I'm gonna have to research this because I saw Pat Benatar when she was in her pinnacle at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. It was the only time I've ever done acid and had a bad trip and had to go home halfway through the concert. It sucked.
You had this acid trip where Terry Bozzio was playing with Pat Benatar.
Exactly
Sounds
right.
about right.
Okay, Phil Rudd or Neil Smith?
Oh, apples and oranges. But
Yeah,
Phil Rudd is so much of a reason, like me and we all as drummers are doing what we do. And it's a full circle thing. It's similar to Charlie Watts. Like, I didn't appreciate it when I was a kid, but then you grow older and you go, oh no, this is really, really good. And you know why it's good because of the sound, the tone, the groove, what it means for the sound of that band. You learn to appreciate, you know.
right.
And what was it you said? You said Phil Rudd or
It was Phil Rudd or Neil Smith.
yeah. Well, of course, Neil. Yeah, it's another guy that I learned to
Yeah,
appreciate later because I had to learn his parts and get
right,
inside his
right.
head in a way to re-record those songs.
J.R. Robinson or Steve Jordan?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Steve Jordan's in the Rolling Stones now.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Oh man, Steve Jordan was an influence going back to the days of late night with David Letterman. He was in the house band. And
Yeah,
I'll tell you another reason he's a huge influence. The live Blues Brothers record from like 1980. That's
that's
Steve
him.
Jordan. Yeah.
Had no idea.
Oh
Wow.
yeah. He plays on Escape Pina Colada, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
from Rupert Holmes. Yeah, he's on that track. He's on a lot of big songs. Became a producer and was playing and producing like Keith Richards and the Expensive Winos. So he was sort of the heir apparent to the drum chair and the Stones. He's
Right.
such an influence, and the fusion stuff he did with John Scofield, etc. Love Steve Jordan. Uh, but you
Ray.
also you mentioned
Yeah.
him, or what was the other one you mentioned?
J.R. Robinson
Yeah,
played
I
on
mean,
everything. My
yeah,
God,
so
what a
many. I
career.
mean, my first exposure to JR was that Steve Winwood record with Higher Love.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's so great, so influential. It's like, oh, this guy plays the hi hat like I've never heard. I got to really focus on that. That was a big deal.
right.
And Michael Jackson, that stuff he did,
Oh God, so many
big
great
resume.
records. Matt Cameron or Jimmy Chamberlain?
Ooh, yeah, similar genres coming up. I like that Matt has had lasting power, Soundgarden, and then Pearl Jam. I haven't met him in person, but we've talked online a little bit, and he seems like a really nice dude.
Right.
And I love that what he's done with those bands has had sometimes a bit of a progressive edge, you know. And then Jimmy Chamberlain, same thing. The Smashing Pumpkins. He's one of those guys that he fits the sound of the band. He's the only band member that's lasted, right,
Well,
outside of Billy Corgan. Hmm?
um, Kenny Roth played with Pumpkins for a bit.
That's true. Yeah, Jimmy was
Yeah.
on like a hiatus there. Yeah.
Yeah. And Kenny didn't have a good experience.
No?
No.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna save it for his episode. He's gonna come on here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh, Here we go. Alex Van Halen or Tommy Lee?
Oh, man. Come on, Fran. Um, well, I kind of liked Mötley Crüe as a kid, but I got into them just a little bit after Van Halen. I liked Van Halen from the start when I was getting into rock and roll. And I mean, wow, that's a tough one. Probably just Alex because it predated for me Tommy Lee
Right.
by this much. But there were so many Van Halen records, and at the time there was like one or two Mötley Crüe records. And Alex he's both amazing, and then he can also be underrated just because of getting overshadowed by his brother in
Hmm.
that band. But man, I mean, taking what was like this badass jazz fusion drum part from Billy Cobham, that double bass shuffle, and then putting it in a rock context, like I'm the One on the first Van Halen record,
Yep.
and then the Full Bug, and then Hot for Teacher, and it was this powerful swinging thing, and he did his own part with the bell pattern that he added to it. And just his swinging feel, like people forget drums have to swing for rock and roll to sound like rock and roll, and he embodies that in a big way. And Tommy Lee does too. I mean, Tommy Lee is like Bonham on steroids in a way.
Right.
Listen to Dr. Feelgood. I'm telling you, to get that feel and play it with the right volume and intensity, it's not easy. Dr. Feelgood's a very syncopated song,
Hmm.
and that is a killer. And Primal Scream, when I subbed for Tommy and Mötley Crüe, that's probably my favorite, Primal Scream,
Yeah.
because it's funky and it's heavy.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting. The one thing I love about Alex Van Halen, if you took all the music away and just isolated his drums, you know that's him because his
yeah,
drum tone is just so unique, right?
yeah.
Is
And
that
there's
the
a lot of tracks
engineer?
online. There's a lot of tracks online where you could hear his drums isolated.
Yeah. Do you think that's the engineer working that tone for him, or is it his kit or his play? Is it like a guitar player? My tone is
It,
in my hand.
it's both. It's the tuning. Like he has that Ludwig snare sound where you hear the little bit of the ring to it.
Hmm.
And they did those first four records at Sunset Sound, where I've recorded a bunch, and
Oof.
I've been in the room where they did those records, hallowed ground,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, it's all the above. But number one, it's the player
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, there's
Uh,
sounds. There were flange effects put on his drums. Like on the Diver Down record, they had that one
yep.
tune that precedes Pretty Woman, like the instrumental intro.
That
And
screaming guitar sounds like a
yeah,
hell bent eagle. Yeah. That's
yeah.
crazy. Okay. Neil Peart or John Bonham?
You just mentioned the two guys that made me want to be a drummer.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
I liked Pert first. It would be him just because that's what made me go, oh my God, drums are cool. Like the kid across the street from me, his older brother had Rush records, and we were playing basketball in the driveway one day, and he played Rush through the window in the living room, and it was Exit Stage Left, the live record with the drum solo, YYZ. I'm like, it was like that thing that snapped at me like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And that made me say, I think I want to play drums. And then soon after I got into Rush, and soon after I got into Zeppelin, first thing I got was the live record, because well, you get a drum solo usually on a live record, and you get like
Yeah.
all the hits, and so it was Moby Dick with that drum solo. And so yeah,
That is
made
so
me
cool.
wanna made me want to drive my neighbors crazy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
did.
Buddy Rich or Gene Krupa?
They did a drum battle way back. Yeah, Buddy, only because again I was exposed to him early on, and boy, talk about unworld, like out of this world. He's doing things back then that today it's like, whoa, that's physically possible. Okay. And Gene Krupa, I mean, he's kind of the first rock star drummer
Right.
doing a drum solo, sing, 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 Benny Goodman. He did that, and he had a drug habit. He's the first rock star drummer for a lot of reasons. And And he's just like a good looking dude that liked to make the scene and hang out. And but boy, could he play! The concept of a drum solo, it became a more mainstream thing when he did
Mm.
Sing Sing Sing, which I remember I got to play in high school in marching band and jazz band.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up by you telling me what's the next for you. When is the next Alice tour? What are you doing? You got any gigs coming up that people can come watch you at in the LA area or anywhere else?
Yeah, yeah, there's always things coming up. We're going to be out in May with Alice in the States here. We got a bunch of shows coming up, and maybe we're coming near you again, Fran. I'll have to check
Yeah.
if we're in Oklahoma. But yeah, I do a residency gig at Lucky Strike in Hollywood, which we do when we can. We used to do it monthly, but now it's when we can do it because the core lineup, the resident band, we all have our different touring gigs. There's guys in it from like Avril Lavigne and Gwen Stefani and Shania Twain, different gigs. So when we come back and we're all mostly in town, we like to do our gigs where we have a lot of guests that join us and
Hmm.
come up and play. We've had some great nights there.
I
So
remember we did the hire.
That's April 23rd, as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay, I remember we did the hired gun launch at Lucky
Right.
Strikes,
Yeah.
right?
We did that. Yeah.
Man, we had so many. I mean, Liberty, Russell Javers,
Right.
you.
Liberty played. Those guys played.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Who else?
Yeah.
Chuck, your bass player,
Yeah.
was there. Nita, Phil X. God, man, what an incredible evening that was.
That was a
Just,
blast.
yeah, it was. Anyway,
Good
hey, man,
stuff.
thank you so much for coming on. And I'm sure I'll see you around soon.
Oh, yeah. Guarantee
I'll,
it.
yeah, I'll post all your stuff at the bottom of the link here, and then we'll see you around.
You got it, Fran. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. And
Always, man.
we'll be hanging soon, brother.
Yep. See ya.